Hello, and welcome to the 108 podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Raquel.
And we're the Type 1 Together girls.
We are stripping down life with type 1 diabetes from two people who live different versions of it every single day. Please remember, Type 1 Together does not give medical advice. We are only sharing from personal experience. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the 108 podcast. I'm so excited to be interviewing my great friend, Devin, today. Welcome to the show.
Hi. I'm so excited too.
Yeah. So Devin and I met through TikTok. I think they're TikTok. But she lives around the Dallas area, which is where I'm from. And so we have gone to meet in person once, hopefully soon.
You're always so busy when you're here.
I know. I'm like trying to see everyone at once, but that was so fun. Even though Devin was actually diagnosed a little bit later in life and not as a young kid, there's just so much overlap, I feel like, in the way that we think about our diabetes, but we also have so many differences. So I'm really excited to dive into both of those. Now, I don't think we need to dive into like your entire diagnosis story. I feel like we all have heard 1,000 of them, so I try to not repeat them too much, but I would love to hear just like the general overview of like, how old were you? What did that look like? And how was it mentally?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed at 23 years old in September, October of 2019. For the longest time, thought it was September, but then I got medical records released to my doctor that I was able to open like a couple years ago. And my official diagnosis didn't get put until October, but I think it's when I got switched endocrinologists. So
Weird.
I'm not certain. Yeah, it was weird. It was like a slow shock for me, honestly. I was really prepared for it because I went into the endocrinologist office like, I have type 1 diabetes. And they were like, no, you don't. You have type 2, which is a really common misdiagnosis for adults. So when I got the phone call on like Tuesday afternoon, I was like, I already knew. Regardless, I got off the phone and I was still an emotional wreck. I had to call all my family and my long-term boyfriend and just be like, I have to go to the hospital and I don't know what's going to come out of this. So I'll keep you guys all updated. And at the time I lived in Austin and everybody lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so, of course, everyone's blowing up my phone like, Devin, we're coming down there. I'm like, no, wait until we know more. Like, if I'm not going to be admitted, it's no biggie. I will come home this weekend. I will explain it all to you. So I feel like the first few months of me being diagnosed, it was like I did not get to grieve it and everyone around me was grieving it. And so I was having to be this emotional stability for them, which honestly, I think allowed me to process it really quickly, but from a really mature lens, because I think had it been the other way around, I would have just spiraled really, really fast and probably ended up in the hospital. Whereas I was like, I have to get a grasp on this and I have to get a grasp on it really quickly. And then it hit me like cold and hard 6 months in, and I really digressed. And then I suffered for probably like a year and a half after being diagnosed until I got with a new endocrinologist. And he was like, hey, like, let's break down diabetes really simply to these are just decisions that you're going to make every single day. It's not like this big over empowering thing. Like, you will figure it out every single day as you go. Like, are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you exercising? Are you eating enough? And then it will be enough. And I remember like letting those few points really stick with me, that like enough was just enough to get me through until I could really take it to the next level and understand diabetes for me specifically, because I think that's the hardest part for anyone, is just understanding diabetes as a whole. And then there's like diabetes for Devin and diabetes for Raquel and like so on and so forth, and how it just doesn't look the same for everyone. So it's like, what is the baseline, and then how do we grow it from there? Which is, I think, a really tactical approach, but it worked really well for me at the time.
I love that. I also, just like going back to your original point about how you were feeling like everyone around you was grieving it, and that impacted the way that you were able to handle it, and you wanted to kind of be okay, right? So that the people around you could be okay. I feel like that's really important for parents to hear, even as young, like if you have young kids, because kids soak all that up. They can tell if your energy is very anxious and scared. And that's, not going to be super healthy for them when they're also needing to grieve that, right? But I understand that the parents also have a right to grieve that too, but that's just super fascinating. So I loved that.
I think the grieving was really hard for my parents. I remember the first really bad low blood sugar I had. It was over the Christmas like holiday, and I had hit like I wasn't even reading a number on my meter, and I was crying in the kitchen floor, and I fallen asleep finally afterwards, and I had woken up to hearing my parents talking, and my dad was saying to my mom that he wished he could just like take this from me. And I remember like poking up my head and being like, I don't wish that for you. Like, I'm young and I'm resilient, and like, I don't know. So I think like parents need to remember that it's like, as much as it is really sad and probably super, super hard, it's like when you're younger and like you, I guess, just conceptualize things so differently. Like,
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's different because my parents didn't necessarily have to take care of me on a day to day basis. But like as a child to a parent, I would never want that for my parents ever.
Right.
I wouldn't trade it on anyone. So I'm like, I can handle this, but I don't want my parents to have to handle this.
I know. I think we all want to take that responsibility and like take it from each other, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so now are your parents at all involved in your care? Do they follow your Dexcom, anything like that?
No, I like to keep it that way, honestly. I think part of it is I just feel this sense of like innate responsibility for diabetes as a whole myself. And that probably just exists because I was an adult getting diagnosed, and you don't have the same complexity of like a pediatric endocrinologist and, your parents, and the pump educators aren't the same way with you as they are with children.
Yeah.
We were traveling this past weekend with my parents, and I had a really bad low blood sugar, and my mom like looked over at me and she tried to hand me like, I don't even know, I think it was like popcorn or something. She was like, here, eat this. And I was like, no.
It's not gonna do the trick, yeah.
Yeah, well, like 2 hours from now, and then I'm gonna feel
Yep.
like crap on the plane.
Oh, that's
She was
so
like, it
funny.
just scares me when I see this because you look so bad. And I'm like, thank you. Like,
Great. Love that.
let
Yeah,
me
thanks.
let me put a chip back in my step, girl.
Oh, that's so funny. Do you have anyone that follows your Dexcom?
I do not. That concerns me sometimes. I travel a lot for work, but honestly, I feel like I do a pretty good job communicating. Like, I have several friends that also have type 1 diabetes that I know I could call and like the drop of a dime and they would pick up the phone. And then my husband, if it was like, he has a work phone and a personal phone. So if I don't catch him on his personal, I can catch him on the work phone. And then like my grandma, I have so many people that I could call if I felt like I was not safe. I would definitely just reach out and be like, hey, can someone stay on the phone with me? I've even been like low inside of hotel rooms, and I'll like tell the front desk people like I have type 1 diabetes. And it was a really cute time. The lady at the front desk knew what type 1 diabetes is. So she walked all the way down to my room and just like sat with me until my blood sugar came back up. And then we ended up talking for like 2 hours after. And I thought
Wait,
it was so
what? That's
sweet.
so
I
wholesome.
know. She was like, it was bad. I was like in the 30s and it was not coming up. And I finally called the front desk and was like, hey, I'm not feeling great. And she was like, I'm on my way. We're going to sit. And so we just sat in the hallway and just chatted for a while. And it was really sweet. I was like, I
Wow.
love this little lady. We're going to be best friends.
Yes. Okay. How are you so comfortable with like advocating for yourself in that way? I feel like that's rare.
I think it's because I had to get diagnosed.
Mm.
I WebMD'd my symptoms. Like, not the right thing to do. Don't ever take my advice, anyone that ever listens to this podcast. I WebMD'd my symptoms, and then I just started reading a lot of medical journals, trying to understand if I felt like everything I was experiencing aligned with type 1 diabetes, and it did. And I had a friend that had diabetes since childhood. And I remember texting him being like, hey, does this sound normal to you? And he was like, I don't think so. And so when I finally got in to see the doctor for the first time and they sent me to an endocrinologist, I was having to advocate for myself since day one. And so I think because of that, I just don't really feel an issue doing that now. I don't always want to advocate for myself. I will do that. I will say that. It just feels exhausting sometimes. But in moments when I need to, I always will. No questions
Yeah.
asked.
I think that's also a great trait to have when you don't have someone following your Dexcom, and like that's okay. Like I just had someone ask me to post on my Instagram stories a poll being like, "Hey, do your parents follow your Dexcom?" And I got so many parents that messaged me. They were like, "I really hope my child never kicks me off," right? And they feel such a sense of ownership, and I don't know, like they are owed that, right? Like that they
Mm-hmm.
get to watch those numbers, especially I'm assuming if you raised your kid, you would feel that way, like if they had diabetes from a young age. But there were a lot of people that said they don't want that. It's not comfortable for them. It feels too vulnerable. They feel like they can handle it. And I think if you're someone that can speak up for yourself and you can feel your lows and all of that, like it is such a personal thing to have someone like always staring at those numbers. Well, I don't know. I just think it's really refreshing that you do that and you're fine.
I don't know that I would say like maybe like do as I say, not as I do. I have a really good friend and she's type 1. She's had it her whole life. And she does my nails. She does nails and her blood sugar was really low, but she's been working really hard to not overcorrect lately. And so we were in a nail appointment. She was going low. She was like, don't let me eat more, Devin. Like, I have to really focus hard on not overcorrecting. I was like, okay. So we're sitting there. I was like, you ate what you think you need to eat. We'll wait the 15 minutes together. Like, I'm going to just keep talking to you so your brain is not overthinking it. And her dad finally called her and was like, why are you not correcting? She said, I already did. I'm trying really hard not to overcorrect. And she was like, but Devin is here with me. And he was like, okay. All right. Well, if Devin's your client right now, then I know you're in good hands. So it was like such a different experience for me to see firsthand somebody's parent being that way. Cause my mom would have no idea. My dad wouldn't either. They would be like, 55, that's not too bad. You're good. And so to see her dad be like 55, this is really concerning.
Yeah.
But I also think it depends on like the range in which you normally live in too. And she's working really hard to bring down her A1C. So she was like, I have to get more comfortable being like in the lower range. I was like, that doesn't mean you have to be comfortable being low though. You just have to be comfortable not overcorrecting, which is really hard.
Yes. Okay, that is a great segue into what I wanted to talk to you about. Can you kind of go through just what you would say your overall diabetes philosophy is now? Like how you manage. I know we both always say like we rather be low than high, right? Just all of that kind of stuff I think will be really helpful for listeners to hear.
I think my diabetes management leans in on like a couple things. The first is about 2 years into being diagnosed, I went into DKA back to back, and it wasn't super bad, but it was like a whole day of being in the hospital. Sorry, my dog.
Okay.
It's like a whole day of being in the hospital and just realizing how serious diabetes was. And that really woke me up. And then about 6 months after that, I had a TIA or a mini stroke. And I don't really think it had any correlation to diabetes necessarily, but obviously like health scare after health scare after health scare definitely starts to shape your mind into a very tight space, I think, especially when considering how you're going to manage something like diabetes. And so for me, I just try to do things in not necessarily the easiest way possible because I still allow myself like a lot of freedoms when it comes to things, but just in a way that I know I can manage it easier. When I'm thinking about food, I try and think about it from like a really structured, like food is a complex thing. What's going to be the way that I can eat this in the best way? Because I always say how you eat things matters just as much as what you're eating. And so learning how different foods affect my body, I used to keep like a food journal in my notes and I would eat just a singular food, almost how you introduce food to babies. And I would notate how long it took to affect my blood sugar. And then did I see another peak a couple hours later? What did that peak look like? How did I have to correct for it? And then it really allowed me to utilize my insulin pump to its full capacity as well, because utilizing Tandem's algorithm, I'm like a big believer in extend bolusing. So I think just finding the philosophy between like balancing food and then balancing the rest of diabetes is so different in my opinion. And so my management is honestly like, what's going to be easiest for me this day? And then do I have like freedom to eat something more? You know, what was my baseline today? Okay, I feel great today. It's probably a good day to eat carbs. And I can kind of tell that when you really start to learn your body. But I keep a really tight range on my blood sugar, which I also think accounts for like less room for error, in my opinion. I know exactly how much insulin I need and when based off of previous things I eat, going back to the whole food journal thing. And similarly for like exercise and so on and so forth. So I guess in layman's terms, like I just try to make diabetes as simple as possible.
Yeah.
And then allow for complex days in there because I need that balance to just be like, I am still a normal person. Like if I'm going to eat something, I'm going to eat it. And it's okay if it sucks, but at least, you know, the one bad day does not discount like my weeks of really great control where I was really focusing on like what was best for my body that day.
Yeah. So I love that. I feel like you have a good balance, like a realistic balance on it that a lot of people struggle to find because you do tend to lean lower carbs sometimes, right?
Yeah. I do. I think that's like one thing that I leaned into pretty aggressively when I was trying to gain back control after DKA was like, I went right into low carb and then I started putting foods back into my diet. So a lot of times people are like, oh, well, you eat super low carb. I'm like, really? I don't. I average anywhere from like 200, some days 300 carbs a day. But I count every single carb I eat. And so that really helps too, is I think some people have, like, you are really great at being like, oh, I can look at something and kind of just go with how it feels. And I have like a very like number approach to it where I'm like, okay, I know this, 50 carbs. Okay. But then based off of how I've eaten things that are similar to this, the fat, the fiber, the protein, whatever it may be, I need to give myself X amount of units. And then I try to use a more like finite approach to it, I guess.
And I love that we have opposite approaches and we both have amazing control, because
Yeah.
it just shows that there's so many ways to get to the same answer. And I think it speaks to our personalities so much, because if I did what you're doing, right, I like ate a little bit more lower carbs sometimes, and I was like super intentional about carb counting everything, it would send me right into burnout. But I think you're probably the opposite. Like if you were more just like, oh, let me just throw insulin out, I don't really know what's happening, then you'd probably, I'm assuming, fall into burnout.
Yeah. The days that I do that, and I do let myself do that to like rehumanize myself, because at the end of the day, like we all need mental breaks from diabetes. So I feel like probably your mental break would be to be very like, okay, I'm going to count every carb this day because I'm going to make it easy for myself. And so on Thanksgiving this past year, that's what I did. I like bolused and prayed, basically. I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 units and then I'm going to extend another 4 over 5 hours and, we'll see what happens. It was definitely, I felt like I had to keep more watch on it versus when I know like this is what I'm eating, this is how long it takes. I give myself it and I don't look at it again for a few hours until I get that buzz saying, hey, your insulin's done delivering or whatever it is. So I think I allow myself that freedom every now and then, but it's definitely, I feel like I'm sitting there with my phone on my Dexcom app waiting and watching for the other shoe to drop.
No, I totally hear that. Do you have alarms set? Like, do you have, I guess, because I know you have like a tighter range. Does that look like having alarms at lower numbers, like before you get too high, or what?
So I keep, right now, I just lowered my range. My high alert is set at 140, and then my low alert is set at 70. And I used to have my high alert set at 180 and my low alert set at 65. But I'm working really hard to mitigate low blood sugar without overcompensating with like a high blood sugar. And I don't necessarily think like 140 is a high blood sugar at all, but I'm training for the New York City Marathon. And so,
oh my gosh, we have to talk about that.
yes, so I'm trying really hard to keep myself like in a tighter window because I think it'll allow for sustainability throughout my marathon training and obviously the marathon itself.
Yeah, setting your alarms at that lower number is super helpful for anyone listening if you're trying to get that tighter control, because you're catching the high before it actually happens. But again, you just have to really know yourself, and are you going to get extreme alarm fatigue, or is it going to be better? Because the truth is, when you get on that roller coaster, when you have that high spike, it's way harder to get off the roller coaster. So if you can, in my opinion, avoid it altogether by going ahead and giving a little insulin, if you're 145 going up, you're probably not going to reach 200, which is just easier sometimes.
It is. Once you get up there, you're up there. At least for me, I'm like, if I get on the ride, I am on it for the day.
Yes.
And it's emotional and it's physically exhausting. And I'm like, I still have a job. I have 4 dogs that depend on me. Like I want to still live my life. And so to feel yucky because my blood sugar is so stubborn when it's high. So if it's high, I'm just there. We're just riding it out and until I go to bed.
I totally agree. Okay, marathon. So you're running it with Beyond Type 1, is that right?
Yes.
Tell us.
So Addie and I applied. I let her talk me into that. Then it kind of just became like all consuming and really exciting. And then a couple weeks ago, they emailed me back this past Friday, but the Friday before, and they were like, "Hey, you've been accepted." And I was like, "Oh my God, I have to run a marathon now."
Yeah, you do.
I joked that I was going to be excited and sad at the same time. I've never run a marathon in my life. Actually, the longest I think I've ever run in my entire life is like not even a half marathon. I don't know. But it was a really good outlet for me going into my wedding last year when I was like wedding planning. One, because I was eating a lot of my feelings at the time. And so to have running to kind of support my blood sugars a lot better was really, really nice. And then 2, it was just like a really good emotional outlet. So I'm very excited, but obviously a lot goes into marathon training, even without diabetes. So to add like that extra layer is a little bit tricky, but my endocrinologist was a really big runner for a really long time. And so he's been a really good resource for me to just like talk about, you know, how to feel my body, especially being on the lower carb side of things. I don't have as much in my reserve tank. So like when fueling is everything for me, especially when you're talking running for like 4 to 5 hours. So, and I've just been like stalking random people online that have type 1 diabetes that run a lot. And I'm like, okay, cool. What do they do? Because not everything obviously works the same for everyone, but it's really helpful to just like have such a big community of people to lean on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've heard it's the most amazing experience. Like I've had some friends
Yeah.
that have done it and I want to do it, but I also, yeah, running, I don't get along with running that well, so I don't know if I ever will, but I'm super proud of both of y'all. I'm excited to cheer you on from afar, but that's so
I don't know
exciting.
that anyone gets along with running, honestly. I think it's like a small form of torture, but you just, it's like it's something you can talk about. Honestly, I giggle now because I've been running for a while and I see online all the time. It's like if you're running a marathon, everyone knows you're running a marathon. And I'm like, oh my God, don't let me be that person.
It becomes your personality. But how cool is it that you get to do it with a group of type ones? That is so special.
That is honestly, I told myself, even if it goes horribly, I'm going to finish it just because, like, my whole philosophy when I was applying for it was like, I want to prove to myself more than anything that you can do hard things living with type 1 diabetes and, like, do it for a really good cause. I think a lot of my, like, diabetes engagement in the community as a whole has really just been online and social media presence, but I would like to get more involved in like the actual, I guess, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but that side of things, like beyond type 1, breakthrough T1D, just the social, I guess.
Get involved.
Yeah. Beyond just me being like, hi, my blood sugar is, you know, whatever in a TikTok.
No, I love that. Okay, I would love to talk about extended bolusing because it's actually something that I really don't use. And I think that's because it feels tricky for me to figure out the right ratio. And both of us are on the Mobi pump, which I do have to say I'm in a contracted agreement with Tandem Diabetes. You might also be.
I'm also in a contracted agreement with Tandem Diabetes.
They're not paying for this episode, but we do have to
They are
say
not.
that.
We do.
So with the Mobi, they just came out with a new update with Control IQ Plus that allows for an 8-hour extended bolus.
8 hours. Yeah.
Crazy. But yeah, can you kind of share like how you figure out how to do that?
Have you ever utilized
I've used it
extended?
before.
Okay.
Maybe explain what an extended bolus is in case someone here doesn't know it.
So an extended bolus is basically your ability to deliver a certain amount of insulin over a duration of time. So in like a really simple number, let's say you're eating 50 grams of carbs and your 50 grams of carbs equates to 5 units for you. An extend bolus, it'll give you the 2.5 or half. If you do a 50-50 split, the 2.5 units up front, and then the rest of the 2.5 units will deliver over the extended period of time that you selected. So for Tandem Mobi, obviously it's up to 8 hours. I have not used the up to 8 hour feature yet. The longest I've gone is 2.5 hours so far.
Okay.
But that's just based off of kind of my body and what I'm eating. I think I'll venture into the 3 hour range eventually, just because I've found that with a lot of foods, like it takes hours a lot of times before you see that. And especially like your higher fat, higher fiber foods, you'll kind of see this dip and then it'll kind of go back down and you'll level out right here. And then it starts to kind of peak up and up and up and up and over, you know, that 4 to 5 hour mark where it's like, okay, now I feel like I'm just dumping all this insulin into me and I wasted a bunch of insulin in this small little window of time. So kind of to come full circle in my top, like saying earlier, I used to keep a log of how foods would affect my blood sugars. That's when I really started implementing extend bolus. I do feel like you have to be a little aggressive with an extend bolus. Your insulin pump really has to be dialed in and you really have to know what you're eating and how you're utilizing that insulin. So for me, if I'm eating something like higher fat, higher fiber, and really high in protein, I will always use an extend bolus. But I also really strategically eat my food. If there's like a carb on my plate, it is the last thing I always eat. In which case, the extend bolus works really well for that, in my opinion, because you've allowed your body to like start to absorb and digest all the nutrients from your fat, fiber, and protein. And then the carb is the slowest acting thing on your blood sugar, at least in my body. So I utilize the Extend Bolus for like 80% of the things I eat, even like ice cream. And it's just because I've learned like, okay, I need to probably be a little bit more aggressive. For me, I found anything really high in fat or fiber, I need about 20% to 25% more insulin. But that also helps because I can extend it. So I'm not giving myself that, 50 grams, 5 units all at once. I'm doing 5 units. I'm extending it for like an hour and a half, hour, depending on what's in the ice cream, honestly. And it works out really well because you get that coverage of the sugar without crashing back down before the fat hits you coming back up.
Yeah.
And it's really a trial and error thing. Honestly, I had some pretty scary blood sugars on it when I first started using it. I was like, all of a sudden I'm skyrocketing up to 200. I'm like, okay, well, obviously I didn't utilize the percentage in which I was splitting it correctly, which is another aspect of things. You can split it like up to like 98 to 2% for the rest of the delivery. And it really works well in sushi too, honestly, because I feel like sushi is one of those foods, like you'll see that initial spike from the rice and then everything else you've eaten after.
Yep.
It takes hours and it lives for you for hours, honestly. So sushi is kind of one of those foods I avoid sometimes though, because it's just so hard. You never know. The little sauces they put on top get really tricky.
So true. So do you typically go for the 50-50 split, or are you more often than not doing different things? Okay.
So I do a lot of different things. I utilize a 40-60 split, a 70-30 split, and then a lot of times like a 55-45. I find that I really need to be a little more aggressive up front, and then it carries me through the rest of the way. But it's really just about trial and error. And like I said, like how you're eating and what you're eating. If I were to eat like a bowl of ice cream, I typically weigh it just to give myself that little bit of leverage. And then I bolus like 3 units up front, normally, whatever that split looks like, depending on how much it is. And then the rest of like the unit and a half or 2 units that I might need, depending on how much I'm eating, gets delivered over like an hour.
Okay. Very interesting. I do want to start trying to use it more. And the cool thing about extended bolus is that you can actually cancel the rest of the bolus, right? If you realize it's too much. So you're not committing to as much up front.
No, that was another thing I loved about it. Let's say like I'm going to eat dinner, but I know I want to go on a walk after dinner. Like the dogs need to go out. My husband's like, let's go on a walk. Then bolusing gives me that like freedom and flexibility to like still go out and walk because you don't have as much insulin going and it's going into your body live. So if I'm like, hey, I'm starting to kind of dip low, I'll cancel out the rest of it. And then just remind myself like, hey, when I get home, if I start to kind of creep up, I probably need to give myself that last little bit of insulin that I didn't deliver.
That's so great also for kids because a lot of parents don't know how much their kids are actually going to eat. So they can cancel it afterwards. And I was actually working yesterday. We're going to do our Tandem deep dive masterclass again soon. And I was messing with the extended bolus feature and I found out you can actually use a temp basal rate while you're in an extended bolus. You can also give another bolus, like a normal bolus, while you're in an extended bolus. So there's so much freedom there. Like set yourself up with an extended bolus. And then if you need more, or I guess if you need less basal, you could adjust either way, which is pretty crazy.
It is. That's what I did on Thanksgiving. I gave myself like 6 units all up front because I was like, I'm just kind of going to graze on all the little pre-Thanksgiving meal snacks and everything that were out. And then that way, if my blood sugar is riding a little bit higher, I have that extra boost. But then I extended bolus like another 4 units over 2 hours. And it was just like, I think the highest my blood sugar got to was like 160 and I ate so much that day. It was insane, including pie. So I was like, and we had 2 Thanksgiving, my family's and my husband's family. So I was like, I need to give myself, as much of a leverage as I can here. And I feel like that just allowed me that flexibility to like eat as I wanted to eat, but know that my blood sugars were going to be covered. And that was really nice. And I think like, I don't know, I say so many like amazing things about extending bolus online all the time. I get so many questions about it, but obviously I'm a little weary of making sure nothing sounds like medical advice. I mean, you really have to trial and error it as much as possible because it's not a perfect science. It changes for me every time I use it for the most part. And that's because diabetes is impacted by so many different things. I'm like, today I need 12 units and the next day I need 4. Who knows?
Yeah, see, you are fluid in your approach in that way. Like you're trying different things, which is
Yeah.
awesome. For those on Omnipod, I believe extended bolus is not available in auto mode, but it is in manual mode. So you can always switch that off if you want to use it. I don't know about the Medtronic pump. Going back to Mobi though, any other little like Mobi hacks, tips, tricks that you love?
Yes, so one thing I love about Mobi or Tandem's algorithm as a whole is like how you can set so many different profiles. And obviously with the new like temp basal rate that you can set, that's super amazing. I've messed around with it a lot, but honestly, I like just like turning on whatever profile I'm going to turn on and then turning it off when I no longer need it. Because especially with marathon training right now, and I'm not a fast runner. I don't know how long I'm going to be running that day. I'm like, I'm going to run 5 miles today, and one day it might take me less time, the next day it might take me more. So I have like so many different profiles set up for different parts throughout the month, whether hormones are impacting me, or if I know that it's going to be a heavier eating day, or if my like time of the month has started and my insulin sensitivity all comes back and I need to really reduce my basal rate and my carb ratio and all that stuff. And so I have like 5 or 6 different profiles that I interchange and turn on at different points throughout the month and even day for that matter. And I think that's just like my favorite thing about the pump is like it works with you and for you if you let it. And I think that is just something I love about it. And then obviously you have like the activity and the sleep function. I utilize the sleep function more than I use the activity function just because my ranges for the different profiles also change as well. If I'm going to be exercising at like a higher range, I want my low to alert me at like 90 and I don't want it to tell me I'm high until like 160. But then my like baseline is obviously 70 to 140 right now. So I just find that sleep works really well because it doesn't give me that auto bolus, which is something that I'm like weary of because when you're running, it's like a perfect science between insulin and working out.
Yeah. I'm so curious to hear how that all goes once you get deeper into
I'm
training. When is
curious
the
too.
race day? Do you
Race
know when the
day
race?
is November 2nd. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you have
It's
some
on a
time.
Sunday. I was like, how crazy that we're running a marathon on a Sunday. At least give us the day off work.
Wow.
Make it a
Okay. Well,
Monday.
literally. Yeah. You better take that day off because you're going to be tired and you need to celebrate.
Yeah, and I'm going to need to eat like a million things.
Yeah. You got to go like get all the New York pizza after that or
Yeah.
something.
Eat it while I run.
Yeah. Literally. Okay. I would love if you could share just some of your like diabetes hot takes if you have any. I think you recently made a video on something similar to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so many diabetes hot takes.
Get into it.
A few months ago, I had made a video saying, like, I feel like diabetes is your disease. Like, nobody else is responsible for it. And you really have to, like, manage it the best for you. And I think obviously the best for you looks really different for everybody, but you have to take accountability in it because at the end of the day, like, you're responsible for your health. And I think we forget that when you add diabetes on top of it. And maybe I have this outlook because I was diagnosed as an adult and I've always felt responsible for my health for the most part. But adding diabetes on top of it, where it is literally something you have to manage 24/7, I'm like, I can't blame anybody else if this goes wrong. I should be paying attention to my insulin ratios and my needs throughout the day and month or year, whatever it may be, and also making those little changes. I would really recommend that you work really closely with your doctor and develop that trust because my doctor is really like, hey, if you feel like you need this, then you need it. And if it doesn't work, dial it back. And if it doesn't work, increase it, you know? But he was like, I can't be there to hold your hand every step of the way. I look at, 6-month overview of how you've been progressing. So it's really up to you to really understand your body and your needs. And I appreciate that because I think it gave me a lot of responsibility in managing. It also like it's hard for me to be like, oh, woe is me about diabetes then, because like diabetes is what I make it most days, and not the other way around. Like I feel like I have full control over diabetes, and I don't think it controls my life. Except when my blood sugar is low, then I'm kind of like, whatever. I'm usually eating everything.
Yes.
And another thing is like, I really try to mitigate highs as much as possible. I know like that means that I probably do experience more lows than people that run at a higher range. And I think that can be scary to a lot of people, but being high is just not something. I had a doctor for the longest time that was really pushing me on understanding the long-term side effects of high blood sugar. And especially like as a woman and considering starting a family and other things like that, those are things that you really have to be on top of. And so I've just always looked at it from that lens point. If I want kids in the future, you have to be on top of your blood sugar like a hawk. And so I'm like, why should I not do that all the time then?
Yeah.
And I just utilize that approach. And that doesn't mean every blood sugar looks perfect at all, but it allows me to be like, okay, we're 140. Let's make an adjustment and, get on top of it quickly, because the higher I'm out of range, or the longer I'm out of range and high, the more damage I'm probably doing to my body over time. And so, I mean, when you look at life, I'm probably, even though I was diagnosed at 23, gonna live 60 something years with diabetes. That's a really long time to have a lot of high blood sugars. And then I feel like my other hot take is like just control as a whole. It's like super important. You really have to just like, the best decision isn't always the most fun decision.
Yeah. Ooh, that would be controversial, but I agree.
Yeah. Like if my blood sugar is 200, it's probably not a good idea for me to go eat dessert. Now, I could eat dessert, but I want to bring my blood sugar back down first. And that might mean that I don't end up eating dessert, but it's just like, for me, I don't ever take that risk.
Yeah, this is so refreshing. And it's one of the reasons why I immediately connected with you. And I want to say for parents listening, like it can sound harsh, and I know that, and it is different for parents. We're not ignoring that. You do really have to balance the mental health side for your kids and making sure, like, if you're always telling them they can't have dessert because their blood sugar is high, like that also might come with issues down the road that are unrelated to blood sugar itself. But I agree with you. I think there's a lot of tiptoeing around the reality of diabetes in this space. And you and I have talked like privately a lot about, people just get so offended online, especially if you are saying like, this is what your blood sugars should actually be. And like, that's not an opinion. That's not a judgy thing. It's literally science and it's fact that if we didn't have type 1, our blood sugars would be in that, 70 to 120 or 30 range. And I have had that same thought so many times. Like, if I'm supposed to have this type of control when I'm pregnant, because that's what's healthiest for me and my body, and it's what's going to give me the ability to literally make another human, then why would I not want that control all the time? And so, again, you always have to bring it back to balancing your whole life, being realistic, making sure that your mental health is good, because that also matters, and enjoying life really matters. But blood sugar control matters too. It just does. Like, we can't ignore that. I think that's actually so messed up when so many doctors are telling parents or adults, like, oh, you can just be high all the time. Like, that's actually damaging. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Now, I wonder that too. I've had friends that have been like, oh, my doctor would never tell me that it's normal for my blood sugar to ever hit the 40s. Okay, yeah, it's not normal, right? But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen when I'm controlling as tightly as I am and making corrections that I know have worked previously, that maybe that day it just works a little better. But there was something that you said that I specifically was like, sparks, oh gosh, I can't remember now. It'll come back to me.
How do you maintain this mindset though and stay out of burnout? Because I think that's the thing that people really struggle with.
I take it day by day. That sounds so cliche, but it really is a day by day. Like when I go to bed, because again, I'm going to sound like a spokesperson for my insulin pump, but I am. She is my ride or die. I love that girl. I made her a girl because I was like, we are strong. But I just I go to bed and I'm like, okay, tomorrow is a new day. And if everything went wrong today and I was like more out of range, or I was just experiencing a lot of blows, or I was just on a roller coaster all day, like that does not mean tomorrow has to continue that. And meal by meal, honestly, I think I just try to like group it and compartmentalize it into just, it is what it is. I did the best I could today, and tomorrow I could do better. It could be worse. I don't know, but that's another day's problem. And I continue on. I think I have gone through diabetes burnout really only twice. And it was really about 2 years in, right before I went into DKA the first time. And I was just kind of like, I didn't know what I was doing at all. I was really flying by the seat of my pants. I was like, okay, maybe I need 10 units, maybe I need 4 units. I don't know. I use most new diabetic methodology where I was like, everything is 5 units or 8 units, pretty much. Like, I was like, 5 units, 8 units, good.
That's fine.
And it worked 40% of the time. I was like, imagine like how much better I would feel. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Imagine how much better I would feel mentally if things were working like 60% of the time or 80% of the time. And so to have like such tight control, like I see how a lot of people argue the side of burnout, but mentally I feel a lot better knowing I'm doing the right things for my body. It gives me
Yeah.
like this, I don't know. I remember my mental health around the time that all of that was happening and being like tired all the time and sluggish and just like exhausted. And now I'm like, oh, I'm not any more tired than the usual person, really. Like, obviously, I have a couple low blood sugars overnight or high blood sugars overnight that cause extra exhaustion, but it's not more than the usual person because I
Yeah.
try to do my best every day to keep myself as in range as possible.
Yeah, I think there's such a misconception that the more we put into our diabetes, the more we're paying attention to it, adjusting settings, all of that, the more mental space it takes up, the more burnout we have, all of that. And I think it's actually the opposite for both of us and a lot of people who have really figured that out for themselves because it does free up your whole life. It frees up brain space. You feel like what I'm assuming a normal person feels like without
Yeah,
diabetes. And you don't have to have that restriction because you know how to handle most situations.
for
And
sure.
so leaning more into learning how to actually manage blood sugar on your own. I know it's controversial, but like, yeah, I love that your endo tells you he's only looking at 6 months or whatever. Like, you need to be making adjustments probably a lot more frequently than that because you actually know what's going on in your life. And that gives you freedom to just live successfully. Yeah,
I think
I
it
agree.
probably is so different for like parents because you are not in your child's brain and body. But I feel like at the same time, I'm not a parent, so like I'm gonna try not to speak like out of turn here. But as somebody who didn't have parents that supported them throughout diabetes, like if my parents were like constantly talking to me about it and kind of like educating me around it and like giving me the like understanding at a small age, I think it would allow me to be like a lot more successful. I see a lot of difference between people who are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as adults versus people who are diagnosed as children, depending on how their parents raised them in it. And all of my friends whose parents like just did everything for them, they didn't ever worry about it. Like when I talk to them about diabetes management, they're like, I kind of just whatever. And then my friends that were like, oh, my parents were like, we want you to learn and we want to do this with you because one day, like, you will grow up and it will be yours. It's so different. I feel like I connect with them a lot more because they like were such a good resource for me when I didn't understand something because they were like, oh, when I was little and I was going through this or whatever it may be, like this is what my family tried and it worked or it didn't work. And it was just really insightful because regardless, diabetes is diabetes. It obviously affects us all differently, but experience can be applied to anybody. You just have to kind of change it to match your needs. And so my friends that didn't really get to be integrated in it as kids, I think they have to like reintegrate themselves as adults and they're in the same place with diabetes management as I am. And I think that's just like my like another maybe hot take I have on it is that it's just super important that parents understand like kids can conceptualize a lot of things and
Yes.
they will grow to understand it more. And I think it would make them better advocates for themselves, especially when you're going through like I get so many questions online. It's like I'm a teenager and I get bullied for this or whatever. It's like, why? I remember one time I made like a TikTok response and this girl was like, I'm getting bullied at school for my Dexcom. And I was like,
Yeah,
tell those other kids to go away. I
literally.
mean, I have something else I'd probably rather say, but I mean, you probably can't say that in school. So,
Yes.
if someone said that to me now as an adult, I would literally be like, mind your own business. Like, imagine if I walked up to you and pointed out anything about you that would be hurtful. So don't do that to me. But I don't
1,000%.
really, I mean, it's diabetes, so I don't really care. Sometimes I hide them though, because I like want to feel like normal. I don't want people to talk to me about it. I feel like it's such like a talking point, whatever. Must have like a sign on my forehead that's like, ask me about diabetes.
Literally, I know, I know. Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah, I don't always like to wear my devices publicly. I think I made a video about that a couple weeks ago. And then I saw like some other videos coming up in my feed of people. I don't know if they were talking about me or not, but they were like, I can't believe some people are saying that they would actually hide their devices. That's so damaging for like people understanding type 1 and all this stuff. But it's like, it's valid for us to not always want to talk about it, right? That doesn't mean
Yeah.
I'm like ashamed of my
No.
diabetes. I just don't always want to talk about it, and that's fine. So hiding devices, that's why I love the Mobi. Like you can literally put it anywhere and I can walk up to anyone at a coffee shop or whatever. They're not going to be able to tell I have type
No.
1, and it's okay to want that sometimes. I really believe it.
I think
Obviously,
it
I talk
is.
about diabetes.
No, literally. I'm like, I have a social media platform where I talk about diabetes all the time. In my day-to-day life sometimes, I don't want people to, I mean, I had my Dexcom on my arm the other day and I was at the airport and this little boy was like, what is that? Like, ugh, how do I explain diabetes to a kid, you know? And I know I probably will one day if I have a child of my own, but like, I don't I don't want to explain the complexity of what diabetes is to this child. And I was like, oh, it's just test medicine. You know, that was it. I
Yeah.
just left it alone at that. And, you know, he was like, cool, whatever. But, you know, you see something on the back of someone's arm or like the insulin pump, it definitely does draw the eye. And I think naturally as people, we just don't think about what we say before we say it or ask it. So I'm like, I know no one comes from a place of being mean most of the time, but I don't know. It's nice to just be like, I don't have diabetes in public sometimes.
Yeah, literally. And yeah, parents who have kids who don't always want to show their devices too. I think that's okay. Like,
Yeah, I think so too.
it can be a lot because kids will ask each other all the time about the devices because they have no filters at all. Okay, I've loved this conversation so much. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that you want to share with the community or that you feel like we missed.
No, I honestly think like my biggest takeaway would just be like do what's best for you and your body. I think there's a lot of like conversation in the diabetes space, especially because online, the community of people, we have so much resource now with people sharing their daily life and just, you know, their experiences. So, like take what you want from each person and apply it the best way that you can. I know I found myself a lot of times early on in my diagnosis from people being told like, oh, just eat this or just do this, just do
Right.
that. And I would try all these things and I'd feel really overwhelmed. And so I'd be like, well, I'm failing so bad now because this isn't working for me, but it works for Raquel. Like, that's not fair. But there are going to be just things that work for each of us differently. And like, comparison is a thief of joy. And that really applies to diabetes too. So if you feel happy with what you're doing, like, just keep doing it. And it's, you know, it's a day by day thing.
Yes. I love it so much. And also just to parents listening, again, I just never want to come across like we know what it's like to be parents or
No.
especially managing diabetes as parents. And so I hope that us sharing our experience as adults with type 1 is still helpful because eventually your kids will be like us. And so just having like some of our thought processes in the back of your mind as you're parenting hopefully will help. But we know that it's very different. Okay, well, you have an amazing platform on TikTok and Instagram now, right? Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yes. I think my TikTok, let me look at what my TikTok is.
Did you change the name?
When I got married. My TikTok name does not have anything to do with diabetes. When I started my platform, I was just like, I don't know how long this is going to go for, you know?
Yeah.
So my TikTok name is just Devin.Lancaster. And then my Instagram for diabetes is Devin.T1D.
Perfect.
Maybe I should make those the same.
No, actually, my TikTok also is just my name because I was like, I don't know if I want to just talk about diabetes, but I do.
That's what I told myself too. If I ever wanted to like kind of expand my platform a little bit more to like just show like a day in the life of a diabetic, not like a day in the life of my blood sugars. You know what I mean? Like it allows me to have that flexibility.
Yeah. Well, everyone go follow. I'll link all that in the show notes. And we always finish our episodes with a blood sugar roll call. So if you're comfortable, we will share. I'm at 114 right now.
I am at 125.
Yay. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on and we'll see everyone later.
Yes,
Bye.